What up? I'm Josh Paulison, and welcome to Your Story Now. You might be wondering why we have this list up. There were 5 questions, so why are we coming back to this? Well, I want to touch on something else. So, in my podcast, there are a lot of episodes, and there are quite a few that go over something that these don't directly cover. Structures, methods, techniques. So, for example, there's a toe method, which I looked at with The Rain with Joey Naden. There's the power swap, which I looked at with Perfect Strangers. The NST method from MASH. They were developing aha moments in Mad Men. There's the We Were Wrong structure from Assassination Classroom. There's a lot of different cool techniques and stuff that I get into, but how do we draw those out of stories? So I want to say that reverse engineering stories can be very hard, very arduous, but when you do it, it can give you techniques and ideas that you can use for the rest of your life, which is why it's so important and so useful. But how do we come up with structures? How did I come up with the We Were Wrong structure with Assassination Classroom? How do we draw these sorts of things out? So the first thing that we need to look at is the structure of the story. And what we need to see is what proceeded. What we need to see is how did they go from A to B. So let's say, for example, that I look at the toe method. This is something that I went over with Joey Naden and we were watching The Rain. So the toe method is trait, opportunity, and expression. And what this is it is a method for characters to express their traits. So in order for a character to express a trait, they first need to have a trait, they need an opportunity to express it, and then they do indeed express it. So you have trait, opportunity, expression. How did we draw this out? Well, we studied a particular scene, and actually we had conversation about the whole episode, looked at a whole bunch of different things, but at the core it was, okay, so what was happening here? We were looking at the character development because that was something that was really interesting in the episode. So we saw that the characters were able to express different traits at different times. And so, of course, in order to express the traits, they needed to have those traits. So an interesting piece was the traits. They had an opportunity to express them based on how the creators organized the episode. So what we would look for are patterns that consistently held. Or alternatively, something very large that the entire story could fit into as a process. So for example, looking at the We Were Wrong structure that I looked at from Assassination Classroom, there were 4 steps overall. There's first, we want better than A, and you can see that in the characters. They wanted to have a different teacher. You had replace A with B, so they got what they wanted, and then they realized A is better. And then they replaced B with A. So the way that you can draw these out of stories is by looking at the overall pattern in the story. What happened, what happened, what happened. And really this ends up being taking a story overall, taking a story in depth, taking a story in detail, and then you zoom out. And then you replace specifics with generics. And this can give you new techniques that you can apply across stories. So with the toe method, Joey and I were looking at the episode and we saw this kind of pattern by zooming out, by making things generic in our minds and the way that we expressed it. With the We Were Wrong structure, with Assassination Classroom, we want better than A, replace A with B, A is better, replace B with A. This was an overall structure in the story, and it was from zooming out and making it more generic. And this is how you can develop techniques with stories, is in a lot of cases, remove character names, make the whole concept more generic, but applicable. And you'll be able to develop a new structure, a new technique that you can use for your own stories. And with that, I'd say it's safe to say case closed, which is what I say on the podcast, but this isn't the podcast, this is the vlog. So that is how you can draw techniques and methods by reverse engineering stories. Basically, you end up taking a story and you zoom out and you make specifics into generics and you study it.